welcome everyone again to this session. We are continuing discussing bus rapid transit, its important success factors and best practices. It is our ongoing effort to share these topics and case studies as part of the recent release of the updated ITDP BRT Standard. BRT Standard is a tool that helps plan and evaluate BRT corridors, the essential feature of BRT systems, and it has inspired cities around the world to plan and improve BRT. I am also happy to announce that from today, the BRT Standard is available in additional 4 languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Bahasa Indonesia, and Chinese. You can find them in a link that I'll share shortly in the chat. Also, some languages might still be being uploaded as we speak, so they're coming right out of the press. So if you don't see some of them yet, they'll definitely be available at the end of this webinar. So today we'll talk about the key elements of BRT, and we'll discuss 2 BRT best practices recently scored with the BRT Standard. We're celebrating the success of Mexico City Line 1 Insurgentes BRT corridor, the Gold Standard BRT, and the San Francisco's Van Ness BRT, which received the Silver Standard seal. We're also making available the most recently scored corridors or the results on the BRT Standard website. I think some of my colleagues might be dropping the link in the chat, but I will also do it shortly for you. So you can see which cities have been recently scored and what the designations are. So now I wanted to introduce to you the panel, starting with the session moderator, Beatriz Rodriguez, who is the Public Transport and Electrification Manager at ITDP Global. She spearheads a lot of the public transport initiatives at ITDP, one being the dissemination of the BRT Standard, providing technical knowledge and capacity building. Hello, Beatriz. Then Aimée Gauthier, who is the Chief Knowledge Officer at ITDP. She's an avid supporter and expert on BRT over the years at ITDP. We also have the 2 speakers from the cities we invited. Kate McCarthy, Public Outreach and Engagement Manager at the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. She will talk about the success factors for the Van Ness BRT Silver Standard corridor, stemming from the city's vision for improved connectivity across the city. Hello, Kate. And last but not least, Viridiana Delgado, who is the Executive Director of Operations and Infrastructure of Metrobus, Mexico City's BRT service. She'll talk about the design and operations of the Gold Standard Line 1 BRT corridor. Hello, Viridiana. So with this introduction, I wanted to cue in the speakers and also welcome Aimée Gauthier to say a few words to kick us off with the session.
Great. Thank you so much, Ivana, and thank you everyone for attending and the speakers and panelists on the call, Zoom, whatever this is. I love public, so consider me the hype person for this webinar. I love public transport. It's my favorite thing, and I love BRT. But I really think public transport is the future of our cities, and to address both climate and equity, we really need to be investing in public transport. What does that mean? It means we need to be improving public transport service. We need to make sure it's fast, reliable, convenient, safe, and frequent. And that's all encapsulated in BRT. And I love how the BRT Standard has actually helped me understand what's important for public transport. What do we need to really deliver good public transport service? And so I'm excited to hear what Bea has to say around the BRT and helping us understand what those really important components are that not just are important for BRT or essential for BRT, but also important for public transport more broadly. I'm really proud that this new version, first of all, is coming in so many languages. I'm excited to check that out, but that the new version, the updated version, is foregrounding really important things like the diversity of users. We have younger and older users, we have people with disabilities, we have caregivers, we have different genders using the system. It needs to be safe and accessible for all of those people with their different travel needs. We have a diversity of cities implementing this, and you can see that even here on this call. And I know these are two great cities, San Francisco and Mexico City, but it's a diversity of cities that is really amazing to see. It foregrounds climate and resilience, electrification, and also gender. Going back to gender, thinking about personal security is really important. It's a huge factor, and if people will use the system. So this is all really great. But linking climate and equity together is the future for how we're going to address all of the challenges that we need for our cities. And just to hi Mate, but just to also say that to meet our climate goals, specifically, the investment we need in public transport is going to be huge. So for Mexico, by 2050, we're going to need 4,300 kilometers of BRT. In the US, I know electrification is important, but if we don't get our cities grounded in public transport, we're not going to meet our climate goals. We need 26,000 kilometers of BRT. This is coming from our Compact Cities Electrified reports that we did per country. So India needs 12,000 kilometers of BRT. So there's a lot of investment we need to do. The BRT standard tells us what we need to be thinking about when we do that. And these two cities, well, these two countries are actually showing up as leaders in this space, Mexico and the United States. We have really good new systems coming out, really innovative ways to be thinking about implementation, digitalization, gender, resiliency. All of these things are happening, but these two cities are leaders within even the realm of that leadership that we're seeing from those countries. So I'm excited to hear these stories of how they did it. It's important to help us understand what we need to do to address all the really urgent things that are happening. So I'm happy, excited, and I guess I pass it to Bia, and thanks everyone.
Thanks, Amay.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Just somebody can please say they're seeing my screen. Okay,
yep.
Great. So hi, everyone. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Ivana. And thank you for all the great people that are watching us right now. As Ivana have mentioned, I'm the Public Transport and Electrification Manager at ITDP. And before we go ahead and really discuss the exciting details and lessons learned, both from Mexico and also from San Francisco, I think it's important for us to really have an alignment of and an overview of all the categories and a brief context of what is the BRT standard, why we need to use it, and why it's important, and also to detail a little bit a couple of its metrics as well. So, okay, it's passing now. So the BRT standard was created in 2012, and since then, we have an agreement between leaders and experts to really understand what are the most important things and elements into design and implementation of BRT systems. Now the BRT standard is in its 5th version, and we have released that this year, so we are really excited about that, as I may have mentioned. But the BRT standard, it aims for making sure that we can have a definition of what is BRT corridor, so define the characteristics of what is qualified as a BRT corridor, also recognize best practices and allow comparison between different corridors around the world, and also evaluate the projects and operations as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those later on. But for the BRT standard, you can have different scores from the beginning as a BRT basic certified, that it's also considering a very good qualification of the system, to bronze, silver, and gold as well. Today, as Ivana have mentioned, we are going to have presentations for both gold corridor and silver corridor as well. And we are releasing the new languages, so please subscribe to our newsletter to also stay tuned, because more are coming as well. So what is the BRT standard? The BRT standard can be used to be scored in many different ways. The evaluation can be then only focus on design. So, for example, as a checklist special for planning corridors, design score really represents the maximum potential of a performance of a corridor before considering operations itself. And it also important to highlight that the BRT standard main scope is not the BRT system as a whole, not the entire system, but the corridor for itself. Since when we are discussing systems, the quality of a system can vary greatly between different corridors. So that's why I use the BRT standard to evaluate corridors and not systems. So the BRT standard, when we are going to evaluate the design, there are a couple of categories that we need to take into consideration. The BRT basics, there are the requirements considered essential to qualify a corridor as a BRT. The service planning, that are the requirements of how specific service should operate for the corridor and how the infrastructure is being tailored for the service plans. The stations and buses, those are the requirements of the interface between vehicles, stations, and users to really support the passengers' experience. The category of communications, those are the requirements related to the system communication and service information provided, and also the access and integration. Those are the requirements that really evaluates the corridor connectivity to its surrounding areas and making sure that we have a building network that really guarantee access for all. And also we can do an evaluation that is more complete, but it's also considering the operation of the corridor. So if a corridor is already implemented and it's being functioned for 6 months at least, we are allowed to really evaluate its usage and making sure that the operations are more representative of a long-term partner. I'm having really difficult word, really difficult problem with this word. So I'm so sorry, better. How a corridor, a BRT corridor will operate will affect ridership, confidence, trust of the users in the system, and it's also critical to ensure that the BRT corridor really retain and attract users. So for that, we need to make sure that we also considering all those aspects as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of the categories and each of the metrics, but I think it's also important to share that the final score in our websites are for the corridors that were evaluated both for design and operations. And you can check it out in our website, both the design punctuation, the operations punctuation, and the final score. The score is also it's only considering official after validation by the BRT Standard Technical Committee. And for any questions or into the scoring process or to request a score for us, please contact BRT Standard at itdp.org. I think Ivana is going to share something in the chat for that. Thank you. Okay. So a corridor is only considered a BRT if the section of a road has at least 3 kilometers of dedicated lanes, and if it punctuates well enough inside the BRT basics category. The BRT basics category, what really does is make sure that we can have a differentiation between a standard bus service or bus line from a BRT itself. So it goes into the 5 main metrics, that is dedicated right of way. So make sure that we have a good segregation of the system to make sure that the system has a very good reliability and making sure that is not within the mixed traffic. We also need to have a good bus alignment. Usually the best bus alignment is located where the confluence with the traffic is minimized, that is in the median aligned busway, and in most cases in the central verge of the rider is the best way to go for that. We also need to have off-board fare collection, that is to reduce travel time and making sure we improve the passengers' experience. We need to have intersection treatments, that is to really forbid turns across the bus lane and minimize the number of potential collisions with the bus lane, and making sure that we can reduce bus delays as well. And finally, but not less important, the platform level boarding. So the platform level boarding is crucial of the interface between the bus and the station or the terminal itself. And it's critical to make sure that we have a safe and smooth boarding for all. So it's gonna really evaluate how to minimize gaps both horizontally and vertically as well. So these 5 metrics are therefore critical to eliminate sources of delay from congestions, conflicts with other vehicles, or either in the passenger boarding and alignments. That is why the metric consider a minimum of a few points in each of the metrics, at least 4 or more points in dedicated right-of-way, 4 or more points in bus alignments, and also 20 or more points in all the categories, in all the sum of the categories. The categories that we have is service planning. That category really evaluates how the corridor is well integrated with the system, with multiple service, and how well it's managed, really to make sure that we can improve overall accessibility and convenience for all users. Its main metrics are going to evaluate if the corridor has multiple routes and it's well integrated with its network, if has a well-managed and full service control center, and also a robust business model, and among others. I'm not going to talk about each metric because otherwise Ivana is going to kill me because I'm going to pass my time for sure. But I think it's important to share that for service planning, Kate for sure will be sharing a little bit about that during her presentation about that Ness. But the corridor is a great example of how the corridor was really thought as a part of the public system as a whole. And we'll showcase a little bit about the commitments of the city with faster commutes, reduce traffic congestion, and really revitalized streetscape as well. Okay. So the next category is gonna be about station and buses. So this category really evaluates how well they are designed and how they are effortless between the interface between the stations and the vehicles itself. We check, for example, how comfortable and environmentally friendly and efficient the stations and the vehicles are for passengers. And also it's gonna check how it will enhance really the user experience and encourage ridership as a whole. So the metric will evaluate, for example, how many passing lanes are there at the stations, where they are located on the road, and how the distance from the intersections, how user and environmental friendly stations and vehicles are, and how is the quality of the pavements for the guarantee of efficiency and also maintenance of the buses in the long term as well. Okay, so the other category is communication. So communications with passengers is something that is vital for our system to be really effective. This category really supports passengers' understanding on how to navigate the system and plan their journeys. This is key, especially when we are talking about people with disabilities, women, caregivers. So this category also evaluates something that is really important, that is how the corridor is really connected to the unified brands of the system. A BRT high quality service is really reinforced when we have a unique brand and identity. Well, so the last category inside the design categories is access integration. So we evaluate how easy and safe connections to destinations really are, and also the connections to other modes as well. This is one of the major difficulties that we have seen around the world in most of the corridors that are implemented. So the BRT is usually implemented without good connections to their surroundings. And a BRT corridor to be really effective must connect people to where they are coming from and where they are going to, making sure that system is really a part of the urban environments and that people can access easily. Viviana for sure will be talking more about this in her presentation about Insurgentes. But the corridor, I think, is a great example of that since it's a part of a BRT network, one of the few cities in the world that really has multiple lines that form its own network while also integrating with the rest of the public transport in the city. The corridor also supported the revitalization of neighborhoods with a great integration design with its surroundings. So, but I'm not going to keep talking about those because otherwise I'm not going to let anything else for them to share. And last but not least, a BRT corridor really, it's more than just the infrastructure. So we need to make sure that the operation it's well designed as well. So that's why we have a category that will evaluate how the corridor really reduce delays and are reliable enough, cost effective, has a cost effective service, and helps really attract and retain passengers too. The category will evaluate, for example, how it's well maintained, how is the service frequency, overcrowding, among others as well. So to make sure that the corridor really delivers a good service that people can feel safe and have confidence in it, we need to make sure that that the operation is going well, because otherwise people are not going to use the system just because of its infrastructure. So considering all that was presented so far, and I know that it was super fast, it was super general, but I think it's clear to state, as I may have mentioned in the beginning, that the BRT systems can set a great standard for sustainable public transport since it really defines the critical elements needed to achieve a good quality and reliable services. So that's why we are also pleased to announce that today we are going to release these new scored corridors using the BRT Standard 2024. We have two corridors from the US, four corridors from Mexico, and one corridor from Brazil. All the scores are available in our website, and feel free to check it out later. Today, we're going to have the presentation of two of them, Insurgentes being a gold corridor and Van Ness being a silver corridor. They're going to share a little bit of the lessons learned for the cities to really follow their insights and their main recommendations. But before I go ahead and I pass along to Kate, I think would be important for us to really hear from you as well, like considering all the BRT standard categories presented, what categories would you like to learn more about? That would be super helpful for us to frame out our next steps into providing more content for you externally and making sure that we can contribute to clarify BRT standard metrics and usage. So you can either scan the QR code or enter the link below. I think Ivona is sharing in the chat with the code as well. And I'm gonna check it out, the results, how the results are coming. Let me present. I think I need to change.
Thea, should we present at the end the results? Maybe the audience can keep on voting during the presentations.
Sounds
Include that
great.
at the end. Great.
So I'll pass
Thank-
along to Katie.
Okay. It's full screen.
All right. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Great. Hello, my name is Kate McCarthy. I'm a public outreach and engagement manager for the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, where I oversee the team of folks who do outreach for transit capital projects and Muni service changes. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you so much. So in San Francisco right now, we are so excited to be celebrating 10 years and 100 miles of transit priority investment citywide through our Muni Forward program. Our Muni Forward program aims to make Muni the best way to get around San Francisco. Muni Forward focuses on low cost, high impact investments that can scale quickly across the most heavily used lines in the city's transportation network. Van Ness BRT, of course, is our most comprehensive project for these types of transit priority investments. However, since 2014, the SFMTA's Muni Forward program has expanded Muni's rapid network that makes Muni more reliable and frequent on San Francisco's busiest corridors. We built 100 miles of improvements to reduce time people riding Muni wait in traffic or at stops. We also improved we also improved safety for people walking on Muni routes citywide. We did this with a toolkit of proven transit and safety upgrades like red transit lanes, bus bulbs for faster boarding, and traffic signals that stay green for transit. Van Ness features many of the tools in the Muni Forward toolkit working all together on one corridor that shows how impactful these tools can be used in concert. But even just a few tools can advance transit improvements on a transit corridor. And where we've seen where Muni Forward program made improvements over the past decade, we've seen ridership grow. It's helped us to reduce traffic and meet our climate action, economic revitalization, and social equity goals. And Muni Forward improvements are made through a system-wide approach. We are informed by data, customers, of course, and the Muni service equity strategy, which I'll tell you a little bit about. This is a groundbreaking strategy that delivers transit improvements to our San Francisco neighborhoods. We have 9 of them that rely on Muni the most. And we determine which neighborhoods these are by those that have the greatest number of households with low incomes, people of color, seniors, and people with disabilities, and lower private vehicle ownership rates. This builds on our Title VI requirements that prohibit discrimination based on race, color, and national origin in federally funded work. And we developed this strategy in collaboration with San Francisco transit equity and affordable housing advocates. We update the strategy every 2 years. It's time to inform the city of San Francisco's biennial budget. So what makes Van Ness BRT so successful? Well, one of the most important pieces of it has been the reliability improvements. We've improved reliability by 45%. That's the time that you spend waiting for a bus. The buses are supposed to come every 6 minutes on weekdays, every 8 minutes on weekends. And that means they come when you expect them to come. And then when you get on the bus, your trip is always about the same duration. You know, if it was 10 minutes one day, it'll be 10 minutes the next. Before Van Ness BRT, we actually had buses crawl along at 8 miles per hour. That's 13 kilometers per hour. I looked it up. And I used to live off of the corridor. I used to be able to get off the bus and walk faster than the bus sometimes because it was stuck in traffic. We also had with the Van Ness BRT, we've made a 36% travel time savings for people riding Muni. And we do this partly with our center, or largely with our center running transit lane. This is in the center of the roadway, and we have turns restricted across the busway so that we don't have any obstructions from the buses advancing on the corridor. We also have transit signal priority. I love it. It holds the green light for buses if they're close, or can even give them a jump on the next green light if it's if it will work for the system. And then we have transit network integration. So Van Ness Bus Rapid Transit, as I mentioned, is part of like our toolkit of Muni Forward improvements that we've been making. But part of the Muni Forward program has been implementing this rapid network that connects our high frequency crosstown routes. So when we first started construction, we consolidated the bus stops. There were blocks that had literally 2 bus stops on either end of the block. For example, on the block of City Hall, there was 2 bus stops on either end. And so we worked with community members to determine, which stops made the most sense in some areas. But really, there's the 5 Fulton crossing Van Ness Avenue, and that is a major east-west thoroughfare. And so we made it very convenient for people to transfer to the 5 Fulton. And we also, as mentioned before, so the Van Ness corridor, you can see we have up in the upper left-hand corner, that's Muni's 49 Van Ness mission that SFMTA operates. And just that green area at the top is the 2-mile or 3.2-kilometer corridor that is Van Ness BRT. But we implemented the improvements on the highest ridership portion of the corridor. It also, the Van Ness BRT also serves Golden Gate Transit, Route 101. I saw someone from Santa Rosa. I'm from Santa Rosa too, and my mom is very happy about the Van Ness BRT because now the service is more reliable. Sometimes, I could get to her house 30 minutes later than expected because of traffic in San Francisco. And then we also have the Presidio Trust Presidigo, that's Golden Gate National Recreation Area. There's a shuttle that operates into the city of San Francisco, and they use Van Ness Bus Rapid Transit also. And so we have 24/7 integration along the corridor, and shorter bus trip times means that we can run fewer buses. All 3 of us operating transit service can run fewer buses to provide the same frequency of service, decreasing costs without any impact to riders. And I know that's music to everyone's ears because transit agencies globally are really struggling right now with the fiscal situation. One thing we implemented actually system-wide, is not specific to Van Ness at all. We actually implemented it I believe in 2012, maybe it was 2013, is all-door boarding for Muni and proof of payment with fare integration with the Bay Area region's Clipper fare system. And when we implemented all-door boarding and off-board fare payment, we improved times by 38%. So it was very impactful. We also, specific to Van Ness, we improved our station amenities. We have wider boarding platforms. We have improved lighting, 3 shelters per station, and we have closed circuit television cameras that allow us to help improve safety. Speaking of safety, we made a lot of really great improvements for people walking. We've seen a 56% decrease in severe and fatal crashes on the corridor. That's largely because we removed left turns on all but 2 of the intersections on the corridor. But it's also because we implemented all sorts of really cool pedestrian amenities, like these center protected medians. Van Ness Avenue is actually San Francisco's widest street, and this allows us to have a safe place for people to stop and wait between the light signal phases. We also daylighted every intersection on the corridor, which means that we removed parking so people walking can be seen better. We improved lighting on the whole corridor. It was a surprise to me that we didn't have any pedestrian lighting on the corridor. It was a surprise because we have City Hall, as you can see in this picture, on the corridor. We also have the Symphony, Opera, and Ballet, which generates quite a few walking trips, especially to BART, which is a regional transit connector. And so the lighting improved a lot, but it also helped us improve, the lighting helped improve our connections to our active transportation network. Wider sidewalks and better lighting at night. We're about to lose daylight savings time in the United States, and the sun sets before 5 p.m. in the wintertime. So it gets dark, and it gets dark pretty late too. So the lighting really improves safety, and the connection to active transportation is important. We have key bicycle routes that are linked along the corridor, and all of our Muni buses and Golden Gate Transit buses are equipped to carry bicycles. So just to close out, ridership has really grown to quality transit, and the San Francisco Bay Area has had one of the slowest return to office rates since the pandemic shifted many San Francisco workers to remote work. And while our downtown fare gates for Metro service have only recovered 50%, the 49 Van Ness mission that goes on the Van Ness BRT has recovered 100% of pre-pandemic ridership. And our 90 OWL late night service that operates on Van Ness BRT midnight to 5 a.m. that's at 135% of pre-pandemic ridership. So again, going back to those like lighting and safety elements. So my main takeaways today are just, implement transit priority improvements, use the toolkit of best practices. Even if you can't implement all of the improvements, delivering transit priority improvements in concerts will help us to deliver that world-class transit experience that we have to deliver in order to achieve our climate action, economic revitalization, and social equity goals. And thank you so much. I am happy to answer your questions about Van Ness BRT after Viridiana speaks. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to cue the presentation for Viridiana.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Viridiana Delgado. I work in the operation and infrastructure area for Metrobus. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in speaking about this great system. I would first like to share some context and general information about the Line 1 corridor. Metrobus was born in 2005. And we started with this corridor. At first, it was 19.06 kilometers. 3 years after, we increased it in 10 additional kilometers to Indios Verdes and Dr. Galvez. And currently, we have the El Caminero terminal. This line was very significant and very important because it was implemented in one of the most important avenues in Mexico City. It's Insurgentes Avenue, which, in addition to being really long, it crosses the city from north to south, and it has a lot of different land uses around it. And thus, there are a lot of points that generate and draw trips. Let me start by talking about the physical components. We have 44 stations, 3 terminals, although based on the routes that we operate, we can have 5 of them depending on the services. We have 4 yards, and we have 182 buses, both articulate and bi-articulate buses. These buses are owned by the operator companies, which operate under a concession. In the case of Line 1, we currently have 4 concessionaires, and Metrobus manages, controls, and supervises the service provided by these companies with their own fleet. We have 500,000 passengers on average per day. That has been one significant challenge right there. As I mentioned, we have different routes, different service routes within the same corridor. For our baseline, we have 4 of them that seek to address these demand peaks stemming from different parts of the corridor. We're not talking about a flat or a steady demand. These routes are commissioned to address those demand peaks, and depending on rush hour, there are certain routes that operate on different times of the day, or perhaps some can operate during different days. This allows us to optimize the use of our resources and the allocation of buses to each service. We have another route that was established to support the metropolitan train. It's one of the most important systems in Mexico City. Of course, it has had its own share of problems arising from maintenance delays. So, as a supporting measure provided by Metrobus, we implemented a route which is quite interesting because it connects line 1 with line 3. A lot of our users are already familiar with this route and use them on a very frequent basis. In regards to our integration and connectivity with the other systems, it is worth noting and pointing out that the Mexico City mobility plan for this 6-year term, we have considered several action lines that might have triggered physical, operational, payment method, integration, and we put users in the middle of all these considerations for public transit. We came up with a image manual, signaling manuals, and we also made adjustments to our infrastructure as well as our operation in order to make it easier to connect from one system to the other and to have information on rates or fees much more readily available. We came up with the integrated payment card, and that has streamlined the user experience. This is a very interesting figure because it shows the demand growth since it was open in 2005. We have a clear increasing trend, which was interrupted by the pandemic, but then we started a new recovery trend. Where we saw an increase once again in the presence of our users. We haven't reached our historic records, but the trend is there. To provide our services, we have established certain performance indicators. And we have used a few tools that allow us to assess fleet availability, operating performance, as well as our direct impact on different road users. Hence, road safety is something that we consider as something very important. Demand increase also had an impact on the increase of fleet size. This chart shows that we started with 80 buses, and currently we have 182 buses. It's worth noting that this growth went hand in hand with adjustments made to our infrastructure. In 2005, the corridor started with the capacity only of using single articulated buses. However, around 10 years after this line started operating, we made the renovations and adjustments to the infrastructure to accommodate for bi-articulate buses and thus increase our offer, our supply. As for our design components, this is our typical design for our bus stations. These attributes allow us to keep speeds, time optimization, streamline boarding and offboarding, and our infrastructure maintenance programs include planning, so these elements receive the right maintenance at the right time for optimal service. And this translates into optimum service levels. So we have the dedicated lane, high capacity buses. Given the height of these buses, they pose no issue when passengers go on or leave the bus. The distance between the bus and the platform is something very important to take into consideration. We also need to provide good maintenance to the lane. The concrete slabs need to receive proper maintenance in order to preserve speeds. And we also need to maintain or make sure that the confinement elements are there in order to avoid the invasion of mixed traffic vehicles. Among the most representative works, in addition to the adjustments made to the platforms and buses, we have built the southern body of the Felix Cuevas station in the southern part of our line. We also changed the location of the Indios Verdes terminal. That was a very significant operating challenge, since the space was reduced. Thus, we were forced to increase our operating times. And in terms of accessibility, we have also made a series of interventions. Previously, we had pedestrian bridges with stairs. Those hindered universal accessibility, and thus they were replaced by access ramps. It's important to highlight that accessibility plays a key role in our system. It's very important for us that people have or preserve their autonomy to move around our system, and not only in this specific system, but the whole integrated public transit system. We are constantly assessing the requirements that we need to include in our maintenance services, as they include in maintenance and renovation of the tactile elements, lighting, and we're constantly looking at the updates on the standards. This line is about to turn 20 years old, so regulations and standards are not the same. Certain characteristics of infrastructure and accessibility, as well as certain services, for example, restrooms, need to be reassessed, updates, and thus we need a strategy to make the relevant adjustments and renovations in order to ensure the universal right to mobility. We still have a lot of challenges in maintenance. Keeping service levels is a very important challenge, at least when we constantly undertake the task of maintaining and preserving this infrastructure. With time, infrastructure fails or deteriorates. If these maintenance activities are not properly planned, we will have a significant impact on our cost that we need to absorb. Our yearly maintenance program needs to consider the most important elements, including the dedicated lane, the slabs need to be in optimal condition in order to secure the safe passage of the buses at the right speed. And if we have potholes, that forces bus drivers to leave the dedicated lane. And as a result, we might increase the chance of a traffic accident. All of these needs and requirements need to be considered. We need to consider the usual wear and tear throughout time. As for station infrastructure, we need to have the right plans, the right blueprints, the right elements, and the right input to plan all facility renovations and maintenance. We need to always have the most updated versions of standards and thus plan the right maintenance in order to comply with these requirements for universal accessibility. As a conclusion, I'd like to say that both operation and infrastructure are key elements that go hand in hand to provide a service. We can't work with only one of them. We know that implementing a BRT system is very difficult, but maintaining it and improving service quality is also very important, which will translate into availability and improvements in service quality. That's what I can share from my side.
Thank you so much, Viridiana, and thank you, Katie, as well. I think both presentations were great and really show how those corridors are really successful and how the BRT standard could evaluate that so generously. I also love the pictures, and I'm gonna for sure collect them with you guys to put in my presentations moving forward. I know that we have a little time left, So I'm gonna make a couple of questions, especially from the Q&A, and I also will be sharing a more general question as well. Um, I think that based on the experiences that both of you have, what are the main takeaway that you could share with the cities that are watching, like the main lesson learned that the corridors are being implemented, and how the cities could really use that advice to implement or plan their own corridors?
I would say from San Francisco, go for the gold. Look at every corridor is unique. Look at what you can implement in terms of transit priority investments and make them. And if you don't reach gold, that's a little bit okay, because our improvements still work in tandem to improve the overall customer experience in it, and it's so important. And I think that once your community becomes familiar with these transit investments, they start to appreciate them. They start to understand, like, oh, they're doing this to improve my trip on transit.
Thank you, Viridiana.
Bien, por mi parte, las lecciones que hemos
From our side,
aprendido, pues operativamente han sido
we have
algunas
learned from
dolorosas.
painful
Sin
experiences.
embargo, lo que nos ha servido bastante es contar con
We
sistemas
have
de
used
incidencias. De esa manera,
a lot
también
of
nosotros hemos podido medir, por
metrics
ejemplo, qué cantidad de afectaciones
systems
tenemos en el
to learn
servicio, y también poner el
the
foco
magnitude of the
en lo
effect
que
on our
tenemos
system,
como prioridad, que
and
es
we
la
always
seguridad
consider
vial.
road
Entonces,
safety
tenemos el
as
registro de
paramount.
hechos de
We
tránsito,
have the
tenemos
data
también
on
un mapa de
incidents.
dónde
We
suceden
have
con mayor
the frequencies mapped.
frecuencia,
We have
y con eso
pinpointed
pues también
the
ha
most
sido posible
important
detonar
places,
ciertas
and
acciones que
thus
también han
we have
sido
triggered certain
pues en
joint
conjunto
actions
con otras
with other
entidades u
entities
otras
or
dependencias de
other government
gobierno, para que
agencies
podamos
in
nosotros
order
también
to
reducir los
address these
daños,
issues
emisiones
and reduce
humanas y
uh,
materiales a cero. Y
human
también
effects
pues
as well
hemos
as infrastructure
nosotros
effects. We also have been
atacar
very strategic
todos aquellos
in
factores que
tackling
nos
those
provocan
things
retrasos
that
en el
generate
servicio.
delays in our service.
Pese a que ya también
Although
desde la
in planning,
planeación se
we
consideran diversos
already have
aspectos,
taken certain
ya
elements into
operativamente
consideration,
se empiezan
during
a
the
detectar
operation,
que
we
pues sí es
learned that we
necesario
need to
fortalecer
strengthen
desde el diseño. Por ejemplo,
certain design
nos
aspects,
enfrentamos a
even
que
though
aunque
we
tengamos
have
ya
already
marcadas o
mapped
mapeadas donde suceden las
where
rutas
left
izquierdas,
turns
y
take
que
place. And
incluso
even though
tenemos
we have signals
señalamientos,
in place,
pues siguen sucediendo con una
we
frecuencia
still have
importante. Y
left turns
además, pues
taking place.
también hemos detonado
And
con
thus,
ciertos acercamientos, por ejemplo, con
we
aplicaciones como Waze,
connect
Google,
with
de
applications such as
también
Google or
al
Waze,
guiar
and when they guide
a
these
estos
drivers,
conductores, pues
they can
no les
actually
anuncian que, por
refrain
ejemplo,
from
que hay una
announcing that
ruta a la
there's a left
izquierda,
turn
y entonces
available there.
nos detonan ahí que tengamos algunos hechos de tránsito. Y también como lecciones,
I
pues
was
como
also
les
telling
comentaba, es
you about
importante
certain
que
lessons learned.
mantengamos cuidado el
Proper
sistema y el
maintenance of the
entorno.
system
Ahí
and the
nosotros
surrounding
también
areas is
gestionamos
very
solicitudes
important. We have
constantes con,
constant or permanent
por
conversations
ejemplo,
with the urban
servicios
services
urbanos para temas
for
de
lighting,
iluminación, retiro de
garbage
basura.
removal.
Si nosotros contamos con elemento adentro de seguridad y vigilancia, que son los policías, pues ya también se
If
les
we
apoya a las
have
personas externas.
our
Con eso
internal
también a nosotros nos cambia
surveillance
el
or
foco de que tenemos que
personnel,
activar ciertas
we can
estrategias de
assist people
seguridad en el
inside the
entorno
system,
con
but we
quienes
need to
tengan la
connect with those
cobertura
providing security and
en
safety
cierta
coverage in
zona,
other
para
areas
también
or in
pues
the
ir
neighboring areas in order
modificando la
to
percepción y
modify
la
and
seguridad
change
del servicio ya
perception and shift
integrado
towards an
en
integrated
cierta área.
perspective.
Thank you both for that. I think it's clear that both the design and operations are something that really impacts on the successful of the BRT corridor. We have collected a lot of questions, and I'm going to combine them all together into the final one. That it's how we can understands and mitigate the potential impacts of the public sector pushback, the media pushback, the stakeholders, how we can really engage with them and making sure that the BRT corridor is implemented successfully.
So we use a lot of metrics to inform how our system is performing. Obviously, ridership is important, also travel times, delays, reliability. We actually we keep our data very public, which holds us to account. You can see all of our data at SFMTA. No, not all of it, but you can see a large part of it at sfmta.com/munidata. And then, of course, customer feedback. We listen to what we hear, we track trends, and we respond to concerns.
Sí, coincido
I
con,
totally agree
Kate.
with
Creo que el
Kate.
ejercicio de la transparencia
Transparency
también ahí nos abre mucho
goes a long
camino.
way.
Es un gran reto
It's a
a
very
nivel
important
interno porque
challenge at the
también nos
internal
obliga a
level
estar
because it forces us
pues en
to
constante
continuously
actualización
update our
de nuestra
information,
información, pero definitivamente el que
but
se
definitely
compartan los
sharing
beneficios
the
que tiene
benefits
el
of the
servicio de
public transit
transporte
system
público, pues eso también ayuda
helps
mucho
a lot
a que se tenga una
in
percepción positiva al
having a
respecto.
positive
Y
perception of
adicionalmente,
the
pues
system at
también
large.
del
And
lado
from the
de
planning
planeación
side,
se cuida
we are
mucho
always
las
very
encuestas
mindful
de
of the
percepción de
service
servicio, realizan
quality perception
unas
surveys.
encuestas
We have
de
yearly
forma anual para que también ahí
surveys
nos den las métricas, obtengamos
in order
la
to have the
retroalimentación
feedback from our
de cómo
users
estamos
on how we
proveyendo
are
el
rendering our
servicio y
service
dónde tenemos
and
también ahí
what
las
are
áreas de
the
oportunidad y
opportunities for
nosotros en donde
improvement and what
necesitamos
we need
pues
to
prestar mayor
address with a
atención para
higher
poder pues mejorar
priority
la
in order to
calidad
improve
del
service
servicio.
quality.
Entonces eso también
That's important too.
es importante.
Thank you so much again, Katie and Viridiana. I think we need to finish just because we are out of time, but I would like to have a lot of more questions and conversations with you guys for sure. It has been a pleasure of me to be in this webinar with you both. I'd like you to share just a closing remark, but I would also like to thank you both for the great presentations and for the great corridors that you both.
I just want to say thank you to ITDP. It's been wonderful to participate. And I just want to encourage folks to talk about how we can be creative to implement transit priority investments in order for us to achieve our goals for climate action and social equity. And then the benefit is economic revitalization that comes along with it. Thank you so much.
Bien, pues por mi parte agradecerles
I would
por
like to
este
thank you very
espacio.
much
Siempre
for
es
having me here. It's always
agradable compartir las
very
experiencias y
nice
pues todo
to
aquello que
share with
también
you
les sirva para que se tome en cuenta y
any
pueda
input
ser
or any insight
pues puntos que también si
that
tienen
might assist
pensado implementar un
your
BRT o
decisions in
también ustedes
implementing
lo tienen, creo que aprender de
BRTs.
las
Learning
experiencias
from
desde el
the
lado
operating
operativo
experiences of
siempre
other
es
cities
muy
is something
nutritivo
that
y
is very
siempre
welcome
pues
and
fortalece el tema
strengthens
de
your
la
planning
planeación.
stages.
Entonces, pues
So I'm
muy
very
agradecida
thankful
y un
and
gusto.
it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll just close this session, but I wanted to thank you for this wonderful, wonderful panel today. Each one of you sharing your time and sharing your stories. We definitely hope to keep celebrating the wins of Metrobus and Van Ness BRT systems. Again, congratulations for the great achievements. Please do visit the BRT website and download the new language version of the BRT standard. All of them will be available later today if they are not posted yet. We do want to emphasize that we want to inspire cities to take action and implement quality public transport services through this effort. So do take time to visit the website and recommend it to colleagues or cities where you work in. Also stay tuned for more webinars showcasing BRT success stories from cities around the world. We're definitely planning more webinars with those BRT systems later this year and into 2025. And then finally, I dropped a link to the upcoming webinar on September 26th. It comes on heels of the Climate Week. It will be on on-street and off-street parking, very important topic as well. Feel free to register. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone. It was great to be here in this webinar space and talk to you everyone soon.